Hi everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a watercolor sketch of a little bunny, and also we have a little yellow chick next to the bunny, and I've gone ahead and done a very light sketch in pencil so that the pencil lines will not show through the watercolor sketch, and that's a good idea for you to make just a very loose little sketch in pencil. Remember not to press down very hard, and that will give you a nice little road map for doing your painting. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just use some clear water here on my brush and start painting over the body here of the bunny. We just want to get some clear water down. That's always good because this is a way that we can prime the surface of the paper to start adding in some color. Okay, so just on the bunny. You won't be able to see this on the camera because it's just the clear water. And then we're going to go start mixing up some colors. I'm going to put some burnt sienna. This is a nice reddish brown here on my palette. And then I'm also going to take this dark gray. It's called neutral tint. It looks very black in the palette. But the wonderful thing about watercolor is if you add a lot of water to it, it thins it out and makes it much lighter. So I'm going to go ahead and also take some blue, just little puddles here on my palette, and then start putting in some color to indicate some of those fluffy little areas of fur on our bunny. Let's take some blue over here. I'm going to mix a little bit of blue, and you can see how soft and light these colors are. That's because when you work with watercolor, you always want to start with a very light wash in the beginning, and then you're going to build up some layers later on. I'm also going to take some of this in here just for the ears, a little bit of color right in here. And we also want to take some of our brown and just make some strokes right over the top. Very, very soft and light in the beginning. And then right underneath its head, right in here, and a few strokes right around the eye. I'm also going to go for some red, and I'm going to make a little puddle on my palette, and then I'm going to go ahead and add lots of water to it so it's nice and light. And then I'm going to paint this right inside, right there where the ear is. All right. We're also going to put some color on the little baby chick, and we're going to do the same process where you want to put some clear water down all around the shape of the head and the body, and then we're going to put our brush in some yellow. Once again, we're going to do the same thing where we add lots of water to the yellow so it's nice and light, and then using the tip of the brush we're just going to distribute some of that paint all around its body, and we'll also put some yellow on its head. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of red to my yellow because I want to get a nice soft peachy orange, and also lay down some of that color right on top of the yellow. So now the color is beginning to blend on the paper. I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush. If you don't have a smaller brush, then you can just go ahead and use the tip of your brush, and that'll really help you to get a much finer stroke. And I'm taking some more of this brown and I'm adding more paint to my puddle so it's just a little bit darker, and then I'm going to come and just push the color all around the shape of the bunny's ear, and then also on the other side. We're also going to create some little strokes. Just notice how I'm making little strokes and all the way down to the bottom and underneath the little bunny's head. So we're already starting to build up some layers, and because the layer of paint underneath is still kind of wet, then we can use just the tip of the brush to make these tiny little strokes. I'm touching the paper and then just lifting off. This is just our very first layer. I'm also going to come over and take some more of this brown that we were working with for the bunny, and then I'm going to put a little bit of color using those tiny little strokes all the way down just to indicate this fluffy little chick, and then also right in here on the leg. So that's going to be it just for our first layer. We're going to go ahead and be back in a couple of minutes, and I'll show you how to build up the next layer. Okay, so we're going to work on the other layer now, just with some clear water, putting that down first just like we did in the first stage, and then we can start mixing some more color. Got some brown here on my palette, and then I'm going to go over the top of where we put the water and start putting little dashes down, little tiny strokes. It's really important to pre-wet your paper, because if you do that, then you are going to be able to paint some strokes on here that look really soft like bunny's fur. If you paint on the dry paper, you're not going to get the same effect. So I'm going to go now and just kind of spread this out around the eye. And then right next to where this little nose is, we're going to also do the same thing. And right underneath Bunny's neck, just put down some clear water. And then we're going to go back into some more color. This is a darker brown. And it's more of a cooler brown. And then we also have another brown that's warmer. That means it's got some more red in it. And it's nice to have two different kinds of browns when you're working on something like fur. So we're going to start with this color with the tip of the brush, and just to create some little strokes, pulling the color out. And then we'll go back into the cooler brown, and then start pulling the color down. I'm going to soften this with just a little bit of water. We go back into this cooler brown, and right on the edge I'm going to paint a line right along here for the bunny's ear. And then run a little bit of water right along that line. And then I'm also going to put some water here on the little chick. And just allow the water to soak into the paper. And while it's doing that, we can start working on the legs of the little chick. And I'm going to mix some orange, which is really just red and yellow. And then you can go ahead and start painting some little strokes here, just a little line. And then also we'll do the same thing here for its feet. So it looks like it's standing on something and not just floating in the air. Putting some little strokes here for its feet right there. We also want to put some color for its beak. Just a little line of orange right there. And we're going to go back in now, mixing some more of our brown. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Now what's happening is that the water has begun to absorb into the paper. So that means that the paint doesn't spread quite as much. And you can see some of those lines there a little bit more distinctly. And then also underneath the bunny, I'm going to take some of this cooler brown, but I'm also going to get a little puddle of blue, And just use a little tiny bit of that on my brush and mix it in. So we kind of get this grayish brown. We want to have all kinds of different colors that we put for the fur of the bunny. So some gray, a little bit of blue underneath there, and some different browns. Just to represent the bunny's fur. And then I'm going to use the same color right inside the bunny's ear. Notice how I put some strokes down on the dry paper, but then I'm going to come back and use a little bit of clear water and go right over the top. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the ear that's behind the one in the front. Just put a little bit of a shadow color right in there. And then we can use some of the same color to also create a little bit of shadow right underneath the chick's body. And because we've already pre-wet the paper, then everything looks really nice and soft. And that's really important so that we get that feeling of fluffy fur right there, and also fluffy feathers on our little chick. And then I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I pre-wet around the eye so everything comes together. Now just remember, this is only our second layer, and when you're working with watercolor, you want to work in layers, and then you can always come back to, and if things dry a little bit light, you can just wait till it dries, and then you can go ahead and build up more layers over the top until you're happy with it. You don't have to do everything all at once. And then I'm putting a few more little strokes over here. It's really starting to look like a bunny. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush, and now we're going to work on the ear. Actually, we'll put a little bit more here on the ear, just a little bit darker, and then on the edge, just so these really stand out. All the way down, a few little strokes. And then also right around the eyes. And we're going to grab some of our gray. It looks like it's black, so it's actually a gray. And if you add lots of water to it, you can make it much thinner and softer, so it does look like a gray. Depends on how much water you use with your colors, depending on how dark you want them. And we're just going to grab some of that color using the point of the brush, and I'm going to go ahead now and start painting in the eye of the chick. This is just going to be the first layer. We are going to come back and go a lot darker. Same thing with the bunny. Now you want to leave a little tiny area where it's just the white of the paper to show the highlight. Right in there. And we're just going to let that dry. Okay, now we're going to come back and put a little bit more detail on the eye. So I'm going to take the thicker paint right in the palette. I'm not going to mix so much water with it this time. And come around and put a little bit of dark value right underneath the eye. And then right on top, still leaving that little tiny highlight there. And we're just going to go ahead and paint that in. And let that dry. And then I'm going to move also over to the little chick. Paint the shape first around, and then you can go ahead and fill it in with a darker paint. So you just have a little wee highlight right there. And this is where we're going to start adding some more details. I'm going to put some brown paint right on one side of little chick's legs right here. There we go. So when you put a dark line on one side and also in between these little toes, you can see that you now have a light side and a shadow side, which makes the legs look more three-dimensional. We're also going to take some of our brown and then a little bit of red, mixing lots of water with it, those two colors. And then I'm going to go ahead now and add a little bit more color to the ears. Sometimes if you look at little bunny's ears, you're going to see some pink. So that's why we're using lots of water to dilute it and then just painting over that area right there. And the same thing, we're going to paint a little bit more color right here for the bunny's ear and just allow that layer to dry. And then we're going to take our bigger brush, and now these layers are dry, so we're going to work up another layer of detail. And all you have to do is just go ahead and wet the entire area. You want to move your brush lightly. You don't want to scrub too much because then you'll pick some of the paint up. And you're just going to allow the water once again to soak into the paper. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with that. And just push that paint around and just leave it right there. And start mixing up some more color again. A little bit of blue to the brown. And then we're going to use these little strokes because we want to show how fluffy this little bunny's fur is. So we're going to keep adding some more of our grey just for some of the shadow areas, especially underneath. That's where you're going to see it's usually kind of dark under there. So we're going to use some of our black or our grey mixed with the brown, and that's going to be for right underneath. Putting a little bit of a shadow underneath it will also make it look three-dimensional. Okay, so we're going to create a background, and you're going to want to go ahead and take some clear water and just put that down all over the background, just a little bit of water. And then some green. Start out just with some of the sap green. Any green that you have on your palette is fine. And we're going to make some little strokes here for grass because we want the bunny and the little chick to look like they're standing on something, right? We don't want them floating in midair. So just those little strokes of grass, little curved strokes. And I'm going over the top of these strokes just to make them look a little bit more softer, and then making sure that I have water. And then coming back over here, you can put some strokes right over the bottom of the bunny, like it's sitting in a little grassy field. Okay, and then we're also going to spread the water around. Coming back into the green. This time I'm going to make a different green by adding some blue to it. And then also do the same thing, coming back over the top, making these little curvy strokes, all different directions. Just like that. Some more strokes run underneath the bunny, and then right over here. Right behind the chick. I'll put some of these strokes as well, different directions. And I want to have some green right in between its feet right here as well. Just fill in all of those little gaps. Right under here. Using the point of the brush, you can move right around the painting. And you can use the tip of the brush just to fill in any of the little gaps. You can also take some other color. It's actually a yellow ochre, or any yellow that you have on your palette. You can mix that with your green. So now you have kind of a lime green. Whenever I'm painting things like leaves or grass, I like to mix 2 or 3 different greens together, because that way it looks more natural. And over here I'm just going to pre-moisten my paper right over here, and I like to let it soak into the paper for a minute or 2, so then the paper's not quite so wet. Going over here. Just painting around these little flowers. We can come back in if we want and add some flowers. I'm going to use some purple and add some blue. And then just to make little dots right in here. Show little purple flowers. A few more right in here. Little clusters on them. Okay. And you use your water to spread everything out so it blends really nicely. And I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush now. And then go ahead and just paint in some more lines for the grass right in here. Little bits of grass right in here. And then I'm going to fill in the gaps of the feet with little dots, and then we'll take some more of our green and a little blue. So we're almost finished, and we're just going to basically add some darker green right in these little crevices and some more strokes for the grass. So we have grass that's going different directions, because grass doesn't just grow up straight, it actually goes all kinds of directions. You want some straight, you want some diagonally, and you also want some light and some dark, and that's what's going to help make it look realistic. And then I'm just going to do a couple more here, and we're almost finished with our little painting, little bunny and a chick over here. All right, there we go. A couple more back here. Okay, so here we are, it's all finished. Now, what you can do with your painting is you can create any kind of background you want. I put my little bunny just sitting and my chick sitting inside a little garden here with different kinds of flowers, but you could add other kinds of flowers if you wanted. You could put a sky. You could really just make it your original little painting with whatever details that you want to add. But we are completely finished with this, and now it's time to sign it, and then we are ready to start another project.